Hi guys, it's Alexandra here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to sit down and share with you my O.W.Ls readathon wrap up. So if you missed it at the beginning of April, the O.W.Ls readathon started, and it is a readathon based on the Harry Potter series and one of the sets of exams that the students at Hogwarts take. Essentially, the exams help the students begin to narrow down which future wizarding career they will be a part of. As a participant in the O.W.Ls readathon, you chose a profession in the wizarding world that you wanted to possibly go into, and then that profession told you which of the prompts that you needed to complete. So for me, I chose the Hogwarts professor track, and that meant that there were 2 required O.W.Ls prompts, and then I needed to pick 5 others to complete. I was, in my opinion, very successful. I'm going to go through each of the prompts and tell you what I read and how I felt about the book, and if there were any changes, because I did switch a couple of the prompts that I listed in my TBR for a different one. I will let you know that as well. So let's go ahead and get started. The first required O.W.L for the Hogwarts Professor track was Defense Against the Dark Arts, and the prompt was Grindylows, a book set at the sea or coast. And for that, I chose The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I've talked about this book several times on my channel already since finishing it. It is a mystery thriller. It's definitely an adult mystery thriller. I would not suggest this for younger readers, but if you are somebody who is looking for a fast-paced, high-energy, whodunit story in a really unique setting, I would highly suggest this book to you. I do also want to make it very clear in this video that this book deals with some very difficult subjects. Just a few that I had written down that came to mind as I was getting ready to film this were, it talks about suicide at a few different points in this book, it talks about abortion, it talks about alcohol abuse, and it talks about hazing. So I just want to make sure that anybody who goes to pick this up is well aware that it is not for young readers, and it's not for anybody who is not prepared or ready at this moment to be hearing about those topics. That's not an all-inclusive list of things that may be triggering, but I did want to put that out there. With that being said, I really did enjoy this. I would suggest picking it up if it sounds interesting to you and you were okay with the topics that are being talked about. It was a fast read and really, really entertaining. The second required prompt was whatever subject area you wanted to teach, you would do the prompt or take the O.W.L exam for that. And for me, I wanted to teach Transfiguration, and the prompt for Transfiguration was Animagus lecture, read a book or series that includes shapeshifting. For that, I picked Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. I am actually about 2/3 of the way through this book. I would have been totally done with it if I had not run into a reading slump after about the first week of April. I did great the first week. I read like 4 books in 1 week, and then I just hit a slump. I didn't want to pick up anything on my O.W.Ls TBR. I didn't want to pick up anything in general. I just wasn't in the mood to read, and so I took a break from reading and therefore got a little behind on my O.W.Ls TBR, but I decided to say that this is a success because I will be finished with this in the next day or 2. I really love this story, you guys. I didn't remember having ever picked this up in the past, but I was reading the first couple chapters and I was like, man, deja vu, this feels like I've read this before. And I looked back at my Instagram because I tend to take pictures of the books that I am reading, and lo and behold, there was a picture on here where I had borrowed this from my local library and said I was going to start reading it, but I must not have gotten very far, probably only 2 or 3 chapters into it, because I did not remember anything past about chapter 3, and I didn't even remember starting this story ever until I was having the deja vu of reading the beginning chapters. So far I am really enjoying this book. I think that the characters are particularly interesting. Yumeko is our main character, and I do enjoy reading from her perspective and getting to know more about her. Right now, I'm actually way more interested in reading from the perspective of Tatsumi. He is the Shadow Clan samurai who is going along with Yumeko on her journey, and I am just fascinated by his story. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm hoping that I think he will be in the rest of the books, and I'm excited to see how his character evolves because his story is quite interesting, and I just like the mysterious side of all of his stuff. Okay, moving on to the 5 prompts that I just got to pick, and the first one that I picked was astronomy, and the prompt for astronomy was night classes. Read the majority of this book when it is dark outside. And for that, I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I used the audiobook version from Libby. I really liked this. I've talked about it on my channel since I read it. It was a good time, and I'm actually considering continuing rereading the series, but I'll have to reread them with the paper copy of the books because the audiobooks are on hold in my library for like 6 months will be the next time that I could get another one. So I'm gonna probably just have to pick up my copies of them, but that's okay. I love Harry Potter. It's always a fun time. It's very relaxing. It's enjoyable to head back into that world. And I really like the second book, Chamber of Secrets, so I'm excited to eventually get to reread that and see how I feel. The next one that I chose was Charms, and the prompt for Charms was Lumos Maxima, read a book with a white cover. For that, I picked The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. This book took me a lot longer to read than I expected because right as I had started it is when I hit that reading slump, and I don't think it was the fault of this book. It was just kind of, I read so much so quickly that my brain needed a break. But I overall really enjoyed this installment of the Raven Cycle. It focuses on Ronan, who is a character that, in my opinion, in the first book was very elusive. I kept thinking, why is he like this? He's very, on the exterior, cold and calculated, and just, I didn't know if he was one of my favorites after the first book. I enjoyed reading about him, but I didn't know how I felt. This book, it focuses on him, and his character really grows, and you start to learn a little bit more of his backstory and why he may act the way that he acts, why he comes across the way that he does to others. I love the relationship that we see him have with his younger brother in this story, and this book, it has a very slow build. I will be honest and say that about the first half of this book, it's a little slow sometimes. You know things are happening that are important, but there's not much action. Whereas the second half of this book, especially the last 50 pages or so, are really intense and lots of action, and I was blown away by everything that happened in the last few scenes of The Dream Thieves, and it makes me incredibly excited to see how this ties into the rest of the series, see where Ronan goes, see where the other characters go too, because there's some interesting developments that happen with Blue and with Gansey, and everybody really has some interesting developments in this book that I hope to see more of and more influence of in the next books. The next prompt was a change. I originally had the divination prompt here, which was choosing a book with a random number generator, and that had chosen The Pint of No Return by Ellie Alexander, which is a cozy mystery. I was right in the middle of the reading slump as I got to the point of getting to The Pint of No Return, and I still love cozy mysteries and I will still read that particular one. I just wasn't in the mood for it, and I needed to get myself out of the reading slump, so I decided to go through my shelves and see if there was a book that was calling to me, and then once I had one, see if I could fit that into one of the prompts. So I did find one, and that was The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, and I don't know, this book was just on my shelf asking for a reread, and I realized that I could read this book for the Arthur Mincy prompt, which is read a book outside of your favorite genre. My favorite genre, at least in the last year or so, has been fantasy, and The Fault in Our Stars is not fantasy, it's contemporary. It's about 2 kids who have cancer and their story. It's a romance. They made it into a movie. I really like this book. This is a great book, and it was just the trick to get me out of my reading slump. I loved this experience. Every time I've read this book, reread this book a few times, and every time I do, there's new things that stand out to me about the main characters, Gus and Hazel, and they're just so endearing, and they feel so real, and they feel like people that you could just have met and been best friends with in real life. It's emotional, it's a roller coaster. I would highly suggest reading the book and then watching the movie, because the movie is actually quite good, especially the extended edition, because there's a couple scenes in the extended edition that I think add to the experience of watching the film. The next prompt was Muggle Studies. Read a book from the perspective of a Muggle, so a contemporary. For that, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. I've talked about this book on my channel a little bit since I finished it. But this is a contemporary romance, and it is super funny and endearing. I love the characters in it. They have great relationships. The humor is on point. It is just a wonderful book. It actually is one of my favorite books I've read so far in 2020. The premise of this book is that you have two characters. You have Augustus and you have January, and they are both authors, but they could not be more different from each other. The only things that they have in common are that they are currently living in lake houses next to each other on Lake Michigan, and that they're dealing with a deep bout of writer's block. They become neighbors, and they end up swapping writing roles for a summer. So August normally writes hard-hitting literary fiction. January writes romance novels that have happy endings, and they swap. So January works to write her first great American novel, and Augustus is working to write the first romance with a happy ending that he's ever written. Hilarity ensues, romance ensues, great friendships and family bonds are discovered. This is a great book. I highly suggest you pick it up. I do think it comes out this month. I think it's released here in a couple weeks. I'll have to check that and maybe put the release date on the screen, but this is a great one of my favorites so far. And the last prompt is potions. Shrinking solution. Read a book under 150 pages. So I chose the 12 Desserts of Christmas by Joanne Fluke that is a part of this bind up. It is a spin-off story from her Hannah Swenson series, and while Hannah is a character in this story, she is not the main character. The main characters are a guy and a girl who are teachers at a local boarding school who get the unfortunate or fortunate job of staying at the boarding school over Christmas break with a few students who are unable to go home to their families. And it's just a good time. There's a budding romance, but there's also a mystery that potentially will get in the way of that romance that needs to be solved. This is a cozy mystery. If you like a good time, if you like people talking about delicious desserts, if you like young children being funny and creating hijinks, this would be a nice short story for you to read. Alrighty guys, overall I would say that this readathon was a huge success for me. I am somebody who struggles very deeply with creating TBRs and sticking to them. I love watching other people create TBRs. I love making TBRs. I just have a hard time sticking to them because I'm such a mood reader, and I also hit a big reading slump this month. So the fact that I finished as many books as I did, and I'm so close to finishing that last book, I'm calling this a win in my book. I hope that you guys enjoyed. If you participated in the OWL Readathon, let me know. If you made a video or you have vlogs, let me know. I would love to go and watch them. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch my video. I hope that you enjoyed. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.